What is going on, all you Pokemon collectomaniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and you know how much I love these monthly views where we look at how the overall era has performed from a top 20 singles card perspective and from a booster card perspective. We have been doing this since September, and I think this has been critically important. Like, this helps us keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the hobby, really at a more macro view, right? Instead of just looking at individual cards and snapshots of that, we've been able to put these graphs together and these percent changes over time together, and I think this is a really fun view, and I just enjoy putting it together, and I hope you all find a ton of value in it as well. Now, if you saw the Sword and Shield video from Friday, Sword and Shield has had a monster last 30 days. Well, spoiler alert, all of that excitement, all of that price appreciation did not flow through into Sun and Moon, and not a bad thing, not a good thing, it's just a thing, right? Sun and Moon was really pumped up there towards the end of last year, and we're starting to see it normalize a bit. I don't know when it's going to slow down, but I do know that being able to look at this every single month will at least help us have some idea of when trends start to change, and that's one of the reasons I get so excited about this. So if you've never seen this video series before, we're going to look at two things, and then we're going to dig into each individual set. We'll even look at a couple individual cards along the way. So we start off with this graph right here, and this is the aggregate total of the value of the top 20 singles cards from every single set in Sun and Moon that had a booster box, right? So no specialty sets, we're just talking about sets that had a booster box in them. And so in September, the top 20 cards from all of the sets that have booster boxes in Sun and Moon, the total value of those cards was $12,604. Now, when we pulled the same prices in October, you'll see that it dropped 0.86% to $12,496, and you can see how it has been progressively dropping over time. We've seen some actual really aggressive drops. If you look at November, December, January, 2%, 3%, 3%. Again, remember, this is a span of 30 days, so dropping 3% overall over a span of 30 days, that is nothing to shake a fist at, right? That is a pretty significant drop. And then, of course, we aggregate it there at the bottom. So if you had bought all of the top 20 most expensive singles cards from all the Sun and Moon sets that have booster boxes in September, it would have cost you $12,604. Today in March, that exact same group of cards is worth $11,098 for a total loss of almost 12%. Now, again, listen, Sun and Moon was really pumped up, so I think this is okay. This is something that should be exciting for those of us who don't have a lot of exposure to Sun and Moon, because there are some really cool singles cards in there, and there's a lot of cards that I've been excited about, but I just haven't quite had the confidence to pull the trigger on them at some of those sky-high prices. So as prices start to come down, I think for the long term, that's okay, right? Nothing is ever upward and to the right forever. Everything stair steps a little bit. So you'll see from February to March, actually the price depreciation slowed down a little bit, right? January to February, it was down 2%, right? Even January or December to January, it was down 3%. January to February, it was down 2%. February to March, it was only down 0.5%. I certainly don't think this is time for us to plant a flag in the sand and say, hey, guess what? Sun and Moon is starting to flatten out. Now's the time to get in. I don't think we're there yet, but I think it is worth noting, and it's something really interesting to keep an eye on. So now, the next thing that we look at is the booster boxes. Obviously, if we're going to do this for singles, we're going to do it for booster boxes. And this is a really interesting graph because it is kind of, I mean, this has been down and up and down and up and down and up. And now February to March, the overall value for the 12 booster boxes that come from Sun and Moon was actually down 1.43%. Now, we have seen more down months than up months, which is really fascinating, but I do think that there is a ton of really expensive Sun and Moon booster boxes out there. Now, there's some really awesome prices right now on some Sword and Shield booster boxes, right? There's also the One Piece, there's also Lorcana, right? Share of wallet is a big thing. So maybe people, instead of going out and spending $600 or $700 on an Unbroken Bonds or Celestial Storm booster box, instead they're picking up a booster box case of something like Brilliant Stars, which they feel like has a better long-term price appreciation, right? So in order for prices to move in something like booster boxes, they have to exchange hands, right? They have to sell. So overall, if you started in September and you bought one of every single booster box from the Sun and Moon era, that would have been worth $7,306. And today in March, you would see a small gain. It would be worth $7,432 for an overall gain of 1.7%. I think in the long run, these booster boxes are still going to perform really well, but I do think that there is a big fight of share of wallet right now going on in the Pokemon space and just in the TCG space in general. And again, that's one of the reasons I love watching this. So if you've got this far, if you enjoy this type of content, this kind of data-driven, graph analysis, then hit that subscribe button, because we do fun stuff like this all the time. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And guess what? We're going to get into the single sets right now, and I cannot freaking wait. So the first ones we're starting off with is is Cosmic Eclipse and Unified Minds. And Cosmic Eclipse is just a freaking beast. And I love Unified Minds actually too. These first 4 sets are really some of my favorites from the Sun and Moon block. But when you look at the price appreciation, or in this case, price depreciation for the singles cards over the last 5 months, it's been interesting to watch. So 5 months ago, the average of the top 20 cards in Cosmic Eclipse was down 4%, then -6%, then -5%. Then over the last 3 months, we see it go to -2% and now -1%. So yes, the price of the top 20 singles are coming down, but as we saw in that previous graph, it's actually starting to slow down a little bit. The rate of depreciation is starting to slow down. Same thing in Unified Minds, almost the exact same trend, -4%, -7%, -3%, -3%, and this month it's basically flat. It is net down a couple dollars, but it's close to zero, so we'll call it flat. But what's interesting to me, and things that I always talk about in this video series, is I keep an eye on the top 10 cards, right? Like I want to see some strength in the big chase cards, at least in the top 3, okay? Because I think that, hey, not all cards are destined to be price appreciations, right? Like not every card is going to grow over time. We look at some of the older sets and a lot of the middle tier cards, I mean, they're not worth a lot of money, so that might be what happens here, but I want to see strength at the top, and I will tell you this. The top 10 for these 2 sets have been taking an absolute beating as of late. The only exception is that chase card from Unified Minds. We're going to look at that right now because I think it is worth noting that Misty's favor. Now, Sun and Moon is filled with amazing trainer cards, and that was something that gave me some caution early on because I don't know if trainer cards kind of have the wherewithal for this long-term price appreciation, the investability of all of it. However, this Misty's favor is an absolute beast of a card. Now, you will see the price graph there to the right. You see that it starts to go up. Then it really kind of to flatten out, takes a pretty sharp drop, and then it starts to come up pretty aggressively. This is a card that I think can absolutely do very, very well in the long run. We've seen it for the last 3 or 4 months, even though a lot of Sun and Moon singles have been under a ton of pressure. As we start to look at other cards, you're going to see that throughout the course of this video. But this Misty's favor, it did hit a bottom. I'm not going to say the bottom, who knows what the bottom is, but it did hit a really strong support level, and it's been slowly working its way up. So this is a card that I'm keeping an eye on. I absolutely love this card, and it's really interesting to see when we have one card that kind of outperforms the trend overall in a set like Unified Minds. Now, next ones right here are Unbroken Bonds and Team Up. And listen, Team Up is the biggest and the baddest of the Sun and Moon era, right? There's no debating that. It just is what it is. And even Team Up isn't immune from some overall price depreciation in the singles. Even though that booster box is knocking on the door of $2,000, even though Team Up was short printed, even though Team Up is the set from the Sun and Moon block, as I just said, those singles cards have been under a ton of pressure over the last couple months. And it is interesting for me to do a little bit of a comparison to Evolving Skies. I don't personally think you can compare the two as a 1-for-1, but Sword and Shield era, Evolving Skies is going to be the big set, and there's a lot of really expensive singles in that Evolving Skies block as well. So when I look at this, the difference between Team Up and Evolving Skies in terms of the average price for the top 20 cards, so Team Up is at $118, Evolving Skies is at $98, but the big difference is the chase card, right? That Lovebirds card knocking on the door of $725 versus the Umbreon, the Moonbreon, right, which is knocking on the door of, I don't know, $560. So if you were to normalize those two, the average for the top 20 cards would actually be almost 1-for-1. It would almost be the exact same. So when I look at how these singles cards in Team Up has performed, I do think that it at least gives me some idea of what a big chase set in the Sword and Shield block might do in the future. So that's why I always talk about this one. Now, Unbroken Bonds is another set that I'm a big fan of. I think the set is absolute fire. I love the fact that it is not trainer driven, right? We talked earlier in this video how so many of these sets have so many trainers in it, and that does give me a little bit of caution, but Unbroken Bonds is not in that camp. It's got some fire cards just like this one in it. This is the Gardevoir and Sylveon, right? This is the big chase card in that set. But look at the price. It is this really cool kind of up and down. It's almost like a rainbow graph. We all talked about how towards the end of last year, Sun and Moon singles prices were just getting absolutely silly. And then they've started to kind of depreciate. They've started to come down or normalize, as I like to call it. Now, the trend of this graph is something that you're going to see continuously throughout this video, so it's something to make note of because, hey, listen, all the cards are doing it. So instead of it just being an individual card under a lot of pressure, it's the overall trend for the entire Sun and Moon block. So that's something really cool to keep on. But this card's absolutely fire. I love that it's a chase card. I love that it's not a trainer. We're only going to see one other big chase card on this video that's not a trainer, and that one is a stud of all studs, so I can't wait to share it with you as well. Now, the next ones we're looking at right here, Lost Thunder and Celestial Storm. Celestial Storm has just been on a freaking tear as of late. Like if you've been watching this video or any of the other videos that I do, which talk a lot about Sun and Moon, the Celestial Storm booster boxes have just been on a tear, right? It's the third most expensive booster box. But what was interesting to me, and this just goes to speak to the power of a big, awesome chase card in the set, is It's only the 6th highest in terms of the average top 20 card volume. So 3rd highest booster box price, but only 6th highest in terms of the average price of the top 20 cards. Now, it does have the 4th highest chase card, which I just talked about, and I'm gonna show you that here in just a minute, and you're gonna see how freaking awesome that card is. But the other thing that was really interesting to me, if you look at the average down there, so the average value of the top 20 cards for Lost Thunder versus Celestial Storm, I mean, the difference is what, like 60 cents? They are literally almost the exact same, but Celestial Storm booster boxes are almost $100 and something more than Lost Thunder, and that is because at Lost Thunder at the top you have that Lugia Secret Rainbow, right, and Celestial Storm at the very top you got this bad boy right here. Now, I told you that trainers sometimes give me a little bit of unease. This card is fire. The art is fire. Like, I love everything about this. Just like I said with the Misty, I think this one has the opportunity to kind of stand the test of time and still to continue to perform well into the future. And what I really love about it is where you saw that kind of rainbow graph on some of the other cards we've looked at and some of the cards you'll see further in this video. Look how it tries to go down and then it literally just flattens out. I mean, from November of 2023 till now, this card has been right at about $260. And that's because whenever it starts to drop below that, the market goes, this card is fire, this card is awesome. We are not gonna allow you to get below $260. So when I see this really, really strong support line here, it gives me a lot of faith in the long-term value of this card, because already at this $260 price point, obviously the market is very, very strong. And there's a great, just overall trend for this one staying there for now, and it could grow in the future, so we'll have to see. But it's absolutely a fire card from a set that is absolutely going nuts as well. Now, the next ones that we're going to talk about right here, Forbidden Light and Ultra Prism. So the data pulled a little bit wonky up here. It shows the booster box for Forbidden Light at $563. That's not right. It's really about $450. But I will tell you this, Forbidden Light has been getting absolutely smacked in the mouth over the last couple months, and especially at the top. The big chase cards, you know, Forbidden Light, the top 5, 6, 7, 8 cards have all been getting kicked in the teeth. Now, Ultra Prism is a really interesting story, and I have mixed emotions on Ultra Prism. What do I love about Ultra Prism? The Lily card, the big chase card. I'm going to show it to you in just a minute. Like, Lily is an incredibly popular trainer. She has this almost cult-like following, which is very worthy. I think she's just absolutely awesome. And it's a $430 chase card. I love seeing that in a set. A chase card like that can absolutely prop a set up. But the challenge for me with Ultra Prism is the other 5 cards behind the Lily, they're all trainers as well. And again, now that I hear myself, I feel like I'm hating on trainers, but I'm really not. But when I think about 5, 10, 15 years down the road, the question is, are these cards going to be able to hold their value or appreciate in value? And I don't know. How many trainers can people fall in love with? Like, how many trainer cards can be over $200 in Ultra Prism? I guess we're just going to find out in the future. But I do think that that Lily card is freaking fire. And one of the things that I think too is the Ultra Prism booster boxes, like, don't get me wrong, $600 is a high price for a booster box. But considering the chase card is 430 something bucks, I actually feel like the booster box price is a little low compared to some of the other sets where we have those really big chase cards, right? The Lovebird chase card is at $700. You can't compare the two because Team Up was short printed, but I have seen chase cards be able to drive booster box price, and I was a little interested to see that the price difference between the chase card and the booster box is actually pretty close right here. So we talked about the Lily, we've talked about that price graph where it kind of does that rainbow. You see it again right here. What I love about this is it's a very smooth curve. Now on the next slide, you're going to see a very unsmooth curve, but when you see a smooth curve like this, it simply says the card is exchanging hands a whole lot, so there's a lot of different data points. So you can see, as we've seen before, it worked its way up towards the end of last year, and it's been slowly stair-stepping its way down. It's going to find support at some point. It has yet to find that. I don't know if it's $425. I don't know if it's $400. For whatever reason, those kind of indicator marks, that's where the market seems to jump in at, but I do think this is an awesome card, and I think no matter what, this card has a very bright future. Now, getting into the next ones right here, Crimson Invasion and Burning Shadows, and lo and behold, we have some green at the top. It has just been a bloodbath at the very top, but we finally have some green up there, and look at the Charizard from Burning Shadows. We're going to dig into that card here in just a second. But the Charizard has performed really, really well. And that Burning Shadows booster box price, just like a minute ago, Forbidden Light was off a little bit. Burning Shadows is off a little bit here. Burning Shadow booster boxes are going for $420. And I'm going to tell you this. If you watched my video where I looked at the most investable single chase cards from the Sword and Shield era, I just got done putting that same view together for Sun and Moon. And I learned so much about that Burning Shadows Charizard that I didn't know. I understand why that card is so expensive. I understand why Burning Shadow booster boxes are going for so much money right now. That video, I just shot the content this morning. I can't wait to get it to you. It's absolutely fire, but it is really cool, and I totally get it now why all of that is going on. Now, what is really scary to me is a set like Crimson Invasion. Guess what? It's knocking on the door of having 0 cards over $30, which is incredible to me. Crimson Invasion, I don't know, it's like 6 or 7 years old at this point, and the singles cards just don't seem to be getting any traction whatsoever. Again, just because a set is old doesn't mean the cards are good, right? You still got to have awesome Pokemon on there. You still got to have great trainers on there. You still got to have investor love in it. But the interesting thing is, even though the cards aren't really great, you still see the booster box over $200. Now, not a great price appreciation compared to all of the other ones we've talked about, but even though this set might not have anything going on from a singles card perspective, even if you had bought the booster boxes, you still would have seen a little bit of price growth. Again, it just speaks to the strength and the power and the stability of sealed. So I told you we were going to talk about that Charizard. This Charizard is not a smooth graph, right? Like, it had this big spike towards the end of the year, and then it dropped like a rock, and it's kind of been stair-stepping its way up. But I will say, over the last month, it has really aggressively gone up. We saw it get all the way down, I don't know, into like the $350 range, and now it's knocking on the door of $400 again. I'm not going to get too far into this card because I do a whole in-depth video on it, and it's coming out on Friday, so I don't want to kind of be a spoiler on that, but I'm telling you right now, this card is fire, and I just think this card has a very bright future. It is insane, all of the information I learned about this card. So, finishing all this up right here, we got Guardian Risings and Sun and Moon, and guess what? We're finishing off the list with 2 sets in the green. The average top 20 singles cards from Guardian Rising and Sun and Moon are actually positive, which is really, really exciting. That chase card in Sun and Moon, the Lily at the very top right, it's holding on to some of its gains that it saw back in December. We saw it. I'm going to look at that card here in just a minute. But it's interesting. You know, we looked at those 2 sets previously, and then we look at these 2 sets here, right? These are the first 4 sets for the Sun and Moon era, and you can't compare it to Scarlet and Violet. Scarlet and Violet's a totally different collecting space than when these came out. But what it does show me and what it does tell me is it gives me a lot of confidence that, hey, even if these first 4 sets from the Scarlet and Violet block are not the best ever, right? Take out 151. 151's an animal of its own. But even if these first 4 sets aren't the best ever, and you have a couple of them in your collection, you can feel really good that, hey, they might not give you the greatest price appreciation compared to some of these Sword and Shield booster boxes that you can buy, but at least you should feel very solid knowing that, hey, listen, it's a sealed product, it's a booster box, little downside risk. Even these sets from Sun and Moon, which aren't particularly awesome, have given us some price appreciation. So, we talked about this in the last video when we did this view for Sword and Shield. Look at the Lily, look at the price graph, right? This is just a cautionary tale for when the market gets too hot on something. Trainers got really, really hot there towards the end of the year. You'll see this popped all the way up to $120. People were piling in on this. I don't know if it's because of the big chase Lily from Ultra Prism, and people just saw this and they thought, hey, maybe if I can't afford the $500 Lily, I'll go for this $80, $90, $100, all the way up to $120 Lily. I don't know what happened, but I do know it fell like a rock after that, hitting a low of like $50 in November. Then it worked its way back up, and it's holding pretty close to $60 right now. So again, just a little bit of a cautionary tale when everybody's piling, and if something seems to get too hot, if Icarus gets too close to the sun, approach it with some trepidation, use some caution, and you don't have to be a follower. You can always blaze your own path. Usually in the investing space, that's the best way to go. So listen, if you made it to the end of this video and you enjoyed the content and you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, I would love it if you do. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. These videos are a ton of fun for me. I hope you enjoy them. I appreciate you more than you know. You guys have an epic one. I'll talk to you later. Thanks, everybody. Bye.